Do you know who I am?
No, I don't. No, no. Oh.
GloRilla's drug arrest has been public knowledge for a minute, but her latest courtroom behavior might have just made things worse. Word is she showed up acting completely nonchalant, and now the judge is heated. Could this little stunt land her behind bars? Let's break it down on Saturday night, July 19th, 2025. While most people were either posted up on the block or chilling at home, GloRilla was in Indianapolis performing at the WNBA All-Star Game. She lit up halftime with Let Her Cook, Tepa, and TGI, soaking up the spotlight on one of the biggest stages in women's sports, completely unaware that her whole world was about to be flipped upside down back home in Georgia around 1:30 a.m. While Glo was likely celebrating her performance or heading back to her hotel, 3 masked suspects broke into her home in the St. Marlow subdivision of Forsyth County, Georgia. This wasn't some random smash and grab by desperate thieves. This was calculated, premeditated street business. According to her legal team, these burglars almost certainly knew she wasn't there. The real twist? Glo's family members were inside the house at the time. They were traumatized when the burglars violated the home, smashing glass and moving through the space like they owned it. And this wasn't about grabbing a TV or electronics to flip for quick cash. The suspects went straight for high-value jewelry. They knew exactly what to take and where to find it, making it clear someone on the inside may have been feeding them information. Word on the street is someone had been feeding inside information about Glo's lifestyle, what jewelry she owned, where she kept it, and most importantly, when she wouldn't be home. Here's where things turned serious. One of the people inside the house that night was strapped and ready when the intruders forced their way, and they fired shots to protect the home, sending the burglars scattering like roaches when the lights flip on. Thank God no one was hit, neither the defenders nor the suspects, even though those suspects arguably had it coming. This detail matters. Whoever was holding it down that wasn't out to kill anybody. They were simply protecting family and property. Exactly how you're supposed to. So naturally, the family did what any law-abiding citizen would call the cops. They'd just been the victims of a violent crime. They defended themselves legally, and now they wanted these criminals caught and locked up for good. At first, it seemed like the police were taking it seriously. Deputies rolled up, started their investigation, and since shots had been fired, it made sense to call in major crimes detectives, and the crime scene unit. Bullets were in play. Evidence needed collecting. This was clearly a violent felony case, but then something happened that flipped the entire situation on its head. While combing through the scene, the deputies claimed they smelled a strong odor consistent with illegal narcotics. Now think about that. The cops came to investigate an armed burglary with dangerous suspects still on the loosing. Suddenly, instead of keeping their focus on catching the burglars, they switched gears and zeroed in on the smell of weed.
Got a search warrant, and authorities discovered what they called a significant amount of marijuana in a bedroom closet.
So now they're hitting up the Lena Regional Drug Task Force and getting search warrants for the property. Think about all the resources getting wasted here. A whole drug task force, extra officers, paperwork for search warrants, all while the real criminals who terrorized this family was getting further away every minute that passed. When they executed that search warrant, these folks found what they called a significant amount of marijuana in the master bedroom closet, plus some unspecified schedule. Uncontrolled Substance WSB-TV reported they found about 2 pounds of loud and some THC wax during their little treasure hunt. Now here's the part that'll have you ready to flip tables. GloRilla was hundreds of miles away doing her thing at a nationally televised sporting event with thousands of witnesses and cameras documenting every move she made. Shorty had the most airtight alibi anybody could ever dream of, yet somehow, someway, she was about to become the only person catching charges in this whole messed up situation. The weed and other substances was supposedly in plain view, which raises some real uncomfortable questions. If this stuff was really sitting out in the open like that, why didn't the people staying at the house, people who supposedly cared about Glo's well-being and reputation, handle things before calling the police? Or better yet, why didn't they clean house immediately after the burglars bounced and before the law showed up? This brings us to some real street knowledge that everybody needs to understand. The people you trust can either hold you down or hang you out to dry. And sometimes you don't know which one it is until it's too late to do anything about it based on the drugs they found during this burglary investigation. Authorities issued arrest warrants, and this is where the story gets even more twisted. The victim of a violent home invasion who wasn't even in the same state when it went down was now facing serious felony charges that could potentially send her upstate for years. Let's explore how GLO's legal team came out swinging, the public outcry that followed, and the disturbing pattern of how the system really moves when it comes to our people. But first we need to understand exactly what happened when GloRilla found out she was wanted by these boys, and how her response sparked even more controversy about celebrity justice in America. How they did GLO dirty with these charges. Alright, now we getting into the part where this whole situation goes completely left, and I need y'all to pay attention to every detail because this matters when it comes to. This really shows how messed up our justice system can get when they decide to make an example out of someone. What happened next was straight up controversial, and it proves how fast they can twist the story on you. On Tuesday, July 22, 2025, GloRilla kept it real and turned herself in at Forsyth County Jail after police issued arrest warrants based on drugs they claimed they found during the burglary. Investigation now, think about that for a second, could have fought extradition, hired top lawyers to slow things down, or tried to make the whole thing disappear quietly, but instead she stood tall and faced it head on. The charges weren't light either. She was hit with 2 felony counts under Georgia law: felony possession of marijuana for having more than 1 ounce and possession of a Schedule I controlled substance in Georgia. That's serious. A conviction for the marijuana charge alone could mean anywhere from 1 to 10 years in prison. Here's the crazy part: while the people who broke into her home and terrified her family were still out on the streets, GloRilla was the one facing the possibility of a decade behind bars for substances found in her own house. During an investigation into crimes committed against her, that's completely backwards. She posted bond the same day, $22,260, but the damage was done. The stress, the hit to her reputation, and the weight of those serious charges were already stacking up. Imagine being her fresh off a huge performance at a major sporting event, feeling like you're on top of the world, only to find out there's a warrant for your arrest and you might be going to prison. And the legal side makes it even worse. While marijuana has been decriminalized in a bunch of states, it's still illegal in Georgia except for limited medical use of low THC oil having over an ounce is still a felony, and that shows just how strict Georgia's drug laws remain. We're not talking about California or Colorado. Horrefus is Forsyth County, Georgia, where drug laws are still stuck in that old school just say no era from the 1980s, but GLO wasn't about to just sit back and accept it. On July 24, 2025, she jumped on social media and addressed the situation head-on in her post. Straight fire, she wrote on X. Crazy, my house got home invaded. Saturday, while I was in Indianapolis performing for the WNBA All-Star Game, and instead of focusing on finding the suspects, they focus on some cannabis. 1, Noi wasn't busted. Twami house got robbed. 3, I wasn't home. Long story short, my house gets home invaded, and I'm the only one that gets arrested. Her message was sharp and strategic. She made sure to mention she was at a huge nationally televised event, giving herself an airtight alibi. She used the word cannabis instead of slang like weed or loud, most likely on advice from her lawyers, to sound more professional. And she drove home the absurdity of it all. Victim of a violent crime was the only person arrested, but GLO didn't stop there. She flipped the script completely and turned this negative into a money-making, move-dropping $40 merch with her mugshot. On it, it reminded a lot of people of what Travis Scott did after his legal troubles. Even TMZ said her mugshot looked great. She was literally profiting off what was supposed to ruin her career. Meanwhile, her legal team was going full force. Her attorneys Marissa Goldberg and Drew Finneling from the Finneling Law Firm released a statement that was basically a declaration of war against the Forsyth County Sheriff's Office. They called her arrest a disturbing window into just how warped law enforcement's priorities have become.
Well, if you don't have anything to hide, you don't hide anything. So my view was she shouldn't have had the weed in her house, and obviously there had to be enough where the smell was overwhelming, and law enforcement, on a call to protect her, found, oops, we got to do it.
This is where her legal team's arguments got real spicy, and honestly, it's something that should have every American worried about police overreach. First, they pointed out the obvious. GloRilla was the victim of a violent home invasion, not a suspect. Sounds like common sense, but apparently the police needed that spelled out. Second, her family home were actually there during the break and did exactly what you're supposed to do. They called the cops. But instead of staying focused on catching, the burglars officers zeroed in on what they called a small amount of marijuana that directly clashed with the sheriff's earlier claim that they found a significant amount. Thirdin, this one's the most Damangales went through. All the trouble of getting search warrants and arrest warrants for GloRilla, who hadn't even been home for a while but didn't issue one arrest warrant for the people who actually committed the violent crime her attorneys called the whole situation. Absolutely unbelievable and a complete waste of tax dollars. They weren't just defending her, they were calling out an entire system that seemed more interested in arresting a celebrity for headlines than actually solving violent street crimes. They also shined a light on the trauma her family went through being terrorized in their own home, staring down the barrel of guns, fearing for their lives while the people responsible were still out walking free. Meanwhile, the victim was the one being prosecuted, but the sheriff's office didn't budge. Sheriff Ron Freeman released a statement saying, "The homeowner is a victim of a serious crime, and we are committed to bringing the suspects to justice. At the same time, we must continue to uphold and enforce the law in all aspects of this case." And right there is the problem. Fee admitted she was a victim, but still treated her like a criminal illegal expert, broke down exactly how they tried to justify.
Circumstantial evidence. If I went to bed last night, there was no snow on the ground. I woke up this morning, there was snow, hardly likely in Atlanta today, and we know it snowed somehow. They smell marijuana, and as a result of that, they executed a search warrant, and what did they find? Well over an ounce, which is a felony.
The Forsyth County Sheriff's Office said the burglary investigation was still active. Detectives claimed they'd found both physical and trace forensic evidence from the suspects, but as of July 27, 2025, not a single arrest had been made for the actual break-in. Let's be real, days after this went down with all the resources of a county sheriff's office, a regional drug task force, and major crimes detectives, they still couldn't catch 3 burglars who left behind physical evidence. But somehow they managed to arrest the victim within days. The streets reacted exactly how you'd expect. Twitter lit up with people dragging the Forsyth County Sheriff's Office for going after GloRilla over weed instead of the burglars. One user wrote, "GloRilla said no arrests were made for the people who robbed her house, but she was arrested for weed possession there." Forsyth police definitely did glow dirty major outlets like the Washington Post, TMZ, Fox 5, Atlanta WSB-TV people, CNN, and The Guardian all picked up the story, every single one highlighting how backwards it was that GloRilla was both the victim and the one getting arrested when you have that many big news organizations covering the same story with the same angle. You know, the situation is bad, and now we've got to zoom out and look at the bigger picture. Who exactly was around her that night? Was this just a run of bad luck, or was something more calculated going on? It's time to get into the real tea, the loyalty questions, and the deeper controversies behind this mess. This situation had the whole neighborhood talking, but it's something the mainstream media hasn't really touched head-on. While most people are focused on whether the police overstepped it, they clearly did. There's another side to this story that digs into uncomfortable truths about the street's loyalty and the people you keep in your circle once you make it to the top. Let's be real about the elephant in the room that nobody wants to say out loud. How did GloRilla end up being the only one charged when she wasn't even in the same state? The answer to that question opens the door to some disturbing possibilities that should concern anyone who's ever trusted someone with their freedom, their reputation, or even their life. Yes, this case sparked real conversations about how Black Americans are disproportionately targeted for marijuana charges. That's a big part of the bigger picture. But there's another lesson here that I think is even more important. The people you trust can either protect you or destroy you, and sometimes you don't find out which one they are until it's too late. Let's walk through this logically. 3 armed burglars stormed GloRilla's home. Her family members were there and were traumatized by the break-in. Shots were fired in defense of the property. The criminals ran off. The family called the police. And here's the key detail: there was a significant gap between the time the police were called and when they actually showed up to start their investigation. During that gap, everybody in that house knew the cops were on their way. They knew there would be questions. They knew searches were coming, they knew there'd be serious scrutiny, and they definitely knew that as the homeowner and a celebrity, GloRilla would take the biggest hit if anything was found. So here's the real question if you truly care about protecting someone who's providing for you, giving you a place to stay, and whose success is helping you. In countless ways, wouldn't your first move be to make sure there was nothing in that house that could get them in trouble? This isn't about victim blaming. GloRilla was clearly the victim of both a violent crime and police overreach, but it does make you wonder, did the people in her inner circle really have her back when it mattered most? Think about if marijuana was found in the master bedroom closet that's obviously her private space. Anyone staying in her home would have known that anything found there would automatically be pinned on her. They would have known she was the one at the highest risk, yet somehow that evidence was left right where police could find it and right, where it could cause maximum damage to her career and her life. And this wasn't her first run-in with Georgia law enforcement. Back in April 2024. She was arrested in Gwinnett County for DUI after making an illegal U-turn at a red light, with police claiming they smelled both weed and alcohol. That earlier case gives more context to her 2025 arrest and shows there's a pattern of legal trouble for her in the same state.
Well, do you know who I am? No, I don't. Oh.
Here's where this story ties into a darker pattern we've seen in the entertainment industry. A lot of people were reminded of what happened with Juice WRLD, different situation, sure, but the same core question. When someone becomes a celebrity and a moneymaker, are the people around them really loyal, or are they just there for the perks? One analyst summed it up perfectly. Why didn't they get that stuff out of the house to protect Glo? See, a lot of people misunderstand what snitching really means. It's not just about telling the police what happened. In celebrity circles, there's often this unspoken agreement: everyone benefits from the star's success, and in return, everyone is supposed to help protect that star. But when legal trouble shows up, it often turns into every person for themselves. The folks living in GloRilla's house, enjoying her generosity and benefiting from her hard work, somehow couldn't be bothered to take 5 minutes to protect her from a situation that could have wrecked her career and possibly sent her to prison for up to a decade. But let's not forget the other side of this role of law enforcement. Their actions were just as troubling, but in a different way. The fact that they went after GloRilla for drug charges while the burglars stayed free was to many another example of racial bias in policing. And this isn't just a theory, it's a documented pattern backed by years of research. When you're a young, successful Black woman in the South, you already have a target on your back. Add celebrity status, money, and influence, and you become an even bigger target for law enforcement looking to make headlines and appear tough on crime, even if it means ignoring violent criminals. To prosecute someone for a plant, a legal expert broke down exactly what this means on a...
Oh, absolutely. If someone who is charged with a crime volunteers, gives him, or in this case herself, up, the prosecutors, the DA's office, and the DA's office recites it's very good, they will likely reduce this, depending on the amount, could easily be reduced to a misdemeanor. But again, it depends on the amount and how it was packaged.
Despite all this legal drama, GloRilla still performed at the WNBA All-Star Game hours after the burglary and kept her career moving forward. She was scheduled to perform at her first annual Globash in Memphis on July 25, 2025, with artists like Mooney Long and Rob 49. The fact that she could maintain her professional obligations while dealing with this legal nightmare shows incredible strength and professionalism. Her debut album, Glorious, dropped in 2024, and hits like Yaglo and TGIF solidified her status as one of hip-hop's rising stars, with cosigns from legends like Rihanna, and even visits to the White House in March 2024. This wasn't some minor celebrity dealing with legal troubles. This was a major rising star in hip-hop who had earned respect from the biggest names in the game and had even been invited to the White House. The potential consequences she was facing were no joke. If convicted on the felony marijuana possession charge, GloRilla could face 1 to 10 years in prison in Georgia. The penalty for the Schedule 1 controlled substance charge could also carry significant jail time, depending on what it was and how much. Think about what this means. A woman who had worked her whole life to escape the streets, who had built a successful career through talent and determination, who was supporting family members and creating opportunities for others, was facing the possibility of losing everything because of substances found in her own crib after she was the victim of a violent crime. As of the latest, reports the burglary Investigation remains open with the sheriff's office still pursuing forensic evidence, but the lack of arrest for the suspects continues to fuel criticism from GloRilla's team, and supporters weeks later. Violent criminals who terrorized innocent people are still roaming the streets while their victim continues to face felony charges. This case represents everything wrong with our justice system's priorities. It shows how law enforcement can lose sight of what really matters: protecting innocent people and catching dangerous criminals in favor of making splashy arrests that generate headlines and boost their statistics. It also shows how the people closest to celebrities can sometimes fail them at the most crucial moments. GloRilla's response to this situation, turning her mug shot into merchandise, speaking out publicly, hiring excellent legal representation, shows that she understands the game and knows how to fight back, but she shouldn't have had to fight this battle in the first place. The streets are watching, and this case will be remembered as an example of how the system can flip the script on you in an instant, and how important it is to surround yourself with people who will really hold you down when it counts. Like this video, click on the card showing on your screen for more.